to do this successfully, you don't have to take a lot of risk. You have to think about mitigating the risk you're taking.
Hello, welcome to the Minihan podcast. I'm Annette, a career coach, people watcher, and believer that our careers don't end when we're 40, 50, 60, or even 70. The truth is, we're living longer, working longer, and we'll have more than one career chapter in our lives. So this podcast is here to share the pivots, the reinventions, the sideways steps, and the leaps of faith from people who've built careers through resilience and imagination.
One thing I felt is I should have done this a little earlier.
There are three takeaways from today's conversation with Amit. One is pivot. You don't have to basically stay in the track that you started. The second is nobody can do it for you. You've got to take that leap of faith. And finally, if you're thinking about setting up your own business, do it early, don't wait.
So, the dreaded question. If we were sitting down to dinner on a Saturday night and we didn't know each other and I asked you, tell me about yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, so generally what I try to convey in my introductions is, one is that I'm a healthcare guy. So I generally like to position myself from what I've done about, so people know what to come for to me for, right? I mean, and then I do talk about a fact that I have been a student of leadership. I've looked at all my roles from a leadership angle rather than anything else. Apart from, of course, you learn many more things. I'm someone who has always wants fun in terms of the environment and the people that I work with. I'm not a big fan of very serious environments in terms of working. I have humor is a big part of my life. I think it's a very important component of my life.
Fabulous. And your career has had a number of shifts and changes over the years. If you were to pick two or three key pivot points that have made all the difference, what would they be?
Yeah, I think first is my choice of not do masters in engineering.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is, when I did my engineering, there was a trend almost, if you belong to a decent, good engineering college, which I fortunately belonged to, and had a well-to-do background from a parent's perspective, who could send you, at least have the money to send you to US from a ticket perspective, and what would most of them, like almost 25 to 30% of my batch, went to do, or more probably went to do masters in US.
Oh, okay.
And that was at that point of time a ticket to US, the American dream, the career in engineering. And engineering was an easier route. You would get a lot of grant and a lot of those stuff. It was not as expensive as doing an MBA was. So a lot of them did.
Okay.
I was not very clear where I belonged, though I had interest in engineering, and of course I did it. I was not very sure, and it was one of the things that I allow myself always, I think, intuitively, is to kind of get that clarity and then really carve my path out and seek that clarity, right? So I said, okay, let's do a job and then figure out. Nothing will, I can do MS after 3 years as well. I got a job and I started doing the job, and in that 3 years,
So, if I remember, Amit, your first job was with a smaller startup organization, wasn't it?
it was a startup 25 years, 30 years back. It still is a startup, in the sense it's a small company which has survived and is doing very well. And that's where I started as a cardiology and monitoring company in India, in Pune. It was just about 2 kilometers from my house. I was reporting to the CEO. I became the blue-eyed boy in the company, and I progressed in that company like, unbelievable. I was like, in 3 years, I was the VP of the company, and in that 3 years, I really discovered that I belong more to management than engineering. And I realized I enjoy the marketing part and the product management part to a great extent, the management part to an extent. I was reporting to the CEO. So I realized that I belong more to management than engineering. Of course, I love technology, and that's why I probably
Mm-hmm.
worked in technology companies. But that's when I decided to do my MBA and said, okay, I need to get out of the whale and get into the sea. And I think the second big change happened was getting a job into my dream company, GE.
Mm-hmm.
So GE Healthcare was like the north star for all those who were in healthcare and medical technology
Yeah.
field. And getting a job in GE was a dream come true. And then I think then I spent a considerable amount, 12 years in GE in different
Mm-hmm.
variety of roles. One of the first books I remember in MBA I read was Straight from the Gut from Jack Welch, which
Okay.
made a huge in the formative years of my life. It made a
Yes.
huge impact on me, and that's why I was more fascinated about G than otherwise I would have been.
So, if there's one nugget that you took from that time and from reading that book and the GA experience that you carry with you today in how you run your business, what would it be?
So G is a leadership company. It manufactures leaders, not products. I think that's the entire focus in GE is to groom top talent into
Mm-hmm.
different roles in different roles to ensure that they really become better leaders.
Yeah.
There are very few companies that do that, and I think
Mm-hmm.
G had a great formula. Whatever it has now been criticized and things like that, but I think G had a great formula of doing that. If you look in medtech industry, every single big company, right? If you go in, I would challenge you that in the top management there is either an ex GE or an ex J&J. These two companies
Wow.
really manufactured leaders. So that experience in GE of running a PNL, running business, being very accountable, having a very high say to do ratio, and the importance of integrity and say to do ratio, all of those were became a part of the DNA. Which so people are very important. Their development is very important. Say to do is very important.
And I know for a fact then, you have spent quite a bit of time with Philips as well. You know,
Yes.
in compare and contrasting, so you knew GE knew you. When you transitioned into that new big role with Philips, how did you find it? What were your sort
Yeah.
of top tips on how to transition successfully?
That I think you're going to make the podcast very controversial by this. Uh,
Oops.
Philips, I was much more senior leader. It was after LBS, but Philips, the difference between G and Philips, at the risk of sounding controversial, so I want to limit that. But so I think Philips is a company which is a huge, much more focus on innovation and product,
Right.
while it might not have the same level of focus on building leaders.
Hmm.
So Philips has a better innovation pipeline. They bring some very interesting features and benefits in products, and they have those kind of stuff. Well, personally, I feel GE has a better inventory of leaders. It was very exciting, actually. One thing I must say is when I joined Philips, I was in two minds in terms of whether I should continue with the same medtech industry or do a little different. Of course, I was going to be in healthcare for
Hmm.
sure, and medtech, but Philips and GE are into the same market.
Hmm.
And so I was in two minds saying, okay, would I really learn much more if I take a different kind of medtech company, right,
Okay.
than Philips when I joined? But of course, things happened. I joined it, and you know how it happened, and thanks to your, I mean, we worked together on that. So when Philips happened, I went in. One of the things I learned, and I think from a leadership, is I think the fact that I a student of leadership is what we were talking about, right? To just see how operating in the same market, two companies can have very different approach and DNA and culture. to
Okay.
do that.
Hmm.
Getting those nuances actually helped me learn about the industry in a very new way, which I was
Okay.
not expecting. Which I was not expecting, to be honest, because I knew the products. The products are the same: the CT, the
Hmm.
MRI, the imaging devices, or the monitors, or whatever. Right? Those are same devices. G and Philips almost overlap and compete with 70% of the product. But
Right.
just understanding the differences in the way Philips is built and GE
Hmm.
is built made me understand about both better.
Okay. And I presume we've got to talk about where you are now and how that pivot came about.
There was a lot of things happening in AI, and anyway, I had done my LBS. The LBS was a big pivot for me, leaving GE and coming for LBS at that stage of the career after 18 years of experience.
We'll just explain to people who don't know what LBS is. It stands for London Business School. And Amit and I met there in the year of 2019 when I was involved in the careers program for the Sloan Fellows. And Amit was one of the executives on the program for 12 months. So, just in case people are
Absolutely.
wondering what this LBS thing is.
Absolutely. And so that year was, of course, transformative, and I'm not going to
Mm.
talk about that because that itself it can take 30 minutes. But but the point in that year, I always looked at that year as the first year of the next 10 years.
Yes.
Right. So that was an important. So when I joined Philips, the reason to join Philips, to be very honest, was just to get back into a little stable income zone after spending in LBS. But that the whole idea was not to stay in Philips for eternity. The whole
Yeah.
idea was to discover the new world in medtech and healthcare and what's happening. And AI was one of the things that was really disruptive, and a lot of things were happening there. And in general, startup was happening big time. So I then joined as
Mm.
a chief business officer in a radiology AI company and got a good flavor of what startups are.
Yeah.
Right, and that gave me a good idea of AI as well as startups. And then eventually I started my own. And the whole idea of starting Insight Tribe came from actually two to three things really. One is what kind of career and life I want to have, right?
Yeah.
And I think that 1 year in London Business School, as well as coupled with few other things that in life, gave me a perspective and time to reflect and think about what is it, right? What do we want to have? If you remember, one of our conversations around the Regent Park was about, do you really want, becoming a CEO everything, right? And do you
Oh,
really
yeah.
want to be in the first place, right? For me, it's very important, the career, the job that I do, not necessarily the ladder, but what I'm doing. I try to find meaning in it, and I was looking at what do I want to do, right? And that was one thing. And then what will help me? So the typical philosophy was, what do I like, what
Yeah.
I've been good at, and
Uh-huh.
what do I really would enjoy from a long term perspective. The
Yeah.
other thing that influenced me a lot was Andrew Scott's
Uh-huh. 100-year
100-year
life.
life.
Hmm.
And the realization that I have much more time. If I, you never know, I would have much more. The probability that I have much more time is quite high. I started thinking I need to design my life to suit that, and becoming and having something on doing on my own. I said it will give me opportunity to extend my career,
Yeah.
uh, really do what I want, work with people that I enjoy with, and extend my career, as well as have some institutional value and exit value of something that I do. Right, at least give myself a chance to do that. If it works, it
Hmm.
works. It doesn't, but give myself a chance to do that. And there were two options in front of me. Right,
Okay.
was I do that at the end of the career, in the sense when you get retired from the corporate world, right? And that's the
Yeah.
attractive one. I said, if I really believe in this idea, this is the golden years. I mean, it's very
Hmm.
unlikely that I'm going to start with a intent to succeed and with the hunger to succeed at the age after 12, 15 years from now. I should
Yeah.
make it now, so that it at that point of time I'm actually have already built an organization. So I started to think, what is it that is required to make that possible, and started to
Yeah.
put pieces together, and took the plunge to start on my own.
So
And that's why I started Inside Tribe. Is a boutique healthcare consulting firm, which is the first step, I would say, towards what I want to build.
fantastic. And I'm a big advocate about starting early. So you know that essentially I'm on that same path with you, where I don't plan on retiring because I like work. I like having
Yeah,
these chats, and I want to be able to do that for as long as possible. But I came to the conclusion that it was better to do it earlier, because at least now I could be learning
absolutely.
what's relevant, what's right, where do I need to go, rather than thinking I knew what I was going to build and delaying it for 10 or 15 years. And maybe it wasn't relevant at all. Who knows?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we have the energy now.
Yeah.
It's not to say that we wouldn't have the energy in 15 years from now, but today we have the energy. If you look at it, as humans, we actually have only two things with us. All other things are temporary in a way, right? So energy and time are only two
Yes.
things that you really can use to get anything, right? So it might succeed, it might not succeed, but that doesn't matter. I think giving that attempt, full-hearted attempt, is critical, and it improves your probability to succeed.
Yeah, and I think you've got to give it a go, because
Exactly.
they all say the things we regret are the things that we don't try, and to a certain extent, okay, there is no guarantees it will be successful, but at least by giving it a go, you know whether or not it's going to work out. But the wondering and the what ifs, I think, are a much bigger burden to carry if you don't
Yeah.
actually give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I love one of the Warren Buffett's quote on this, right? He says that people are ready to work with a boss for 20 years, but are not ready to give themselves 3 years of patience to build a business. But you just have to be honest to yourself, and do that plunge, and believe, without having entire clarity, believe that things will work out.
Yeah. So Ahmed, you know that I slightly go off track, so I am going to go slightly off track. But when you were talking just now, I what was popping into my head was this whole concept of, yes, it's brilliant to try, and we're both on that page where we are triers. But there's also compromises, and there's also other people who have to be considered when we make these choices. When you were making that decision to go out and set up your own operation, what did you have to take into consideration, and what compromises did you have to make?
Oh yeah. Oh, excellent question. So one was the financial consideration and the cost of doing this, which is
Yeah.
as primary as that. And of course, I have savings. I have a career behind me that I have done. But at the same time, I did LBS, so my savings are not is not much high, right? But the point is, yes, I had to consider financial till things happen, and you have to be careful about your finances much more than earlier. Then have to guarantee to a certain extent that, okay, this much amount of money I have to keep aside for the family to keep running, and then how am I going to manage, and all doing the calculations, getting the people buy-in into doing something like that, right? Your key family members as well as your stakeholders in life, right? Yeah. Going back to your philosophy, you are a CEO of your own company, and there is a board of directors. So
Yes.
to getting all of the board members to agree, personal and professional ones, to say that, this is something they want to do, and I'll do that. And I'm not saying people around me were delighted to hear this, not really, but they were supportive, that
Okay.
that he will find his way. I mean, when I did my London Business School program, it was one of the most lonely decisions in my life, and they realized I took it and came out well. So they said, okay, if you want to try this, you can try that. So I think financial considerations, family considerations, are two things. And third, I think, is very important, is there is this notion that entrepreneurs are the people who take a lot of risk. I think I have a counter to it. Actually, no. I've realized to do this successfully, you don't have to take a lot of risk. You have to think about mitigating the risk you're taking more than just taking them. You have to take risk, of course, but
Yes.
you also have to constantly work on mitigating those risks. How do I spend less, and go step by step. Also, it would mean, okay, what kind of work I would have loved to probably start directly an AI company
Okay.
with in a particular area and stuff like that. But I said, the kind of money that you have to build and do things for that, and with the uncertainty it has,
Mm,
might not be a good idea. Let me start step by step, right? And
yeah.
let me start something that is more concrete, where I would understand success milestones much earlier, and there would be a minimum kind of guarantee of what would come, not guarantee, but a high probability of certain things coming for you from a business perspective. So you really have to think about all of those things.
So at this stage, Amit, what have you learned about yourself in the last 6 to 12 months that you wish you'd known earlier in your career?
One thing I felt is I should have done this little earlier,
Okay.
right? So I think giving yourself a chance to kind of prove yourself, not prove yourself is not the right word, to do what you wanted to, kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And be entrepreneurial. A little bit early would have done. I'm not saying I should have done it in my 20s. That would be
No.
wrong, because I learned a lot from. So if I was not a GE executive, a Philips executive, and the things that I've done, I would be much less valuable in what I'm
Mm,
doing right now.
yeah.
So I wouldn't say that I just should have started entrepreneurship right from day one of my college. No, not really. The second thing I learned is, I'm learning rather. I wouldn't say I've learned, is uh, I can think bigger, right?
Okay.
And if you start thinking bigger, you actually are able to stretch yourself more than what you think.
Yeah.
So sometimes you kind of underestimate of what things can happen, right? And so a little bit thing. So I'm not saying be foolhardy, but thinking bigger and then starting working on it from a steps perspective. And I'm still learning. I think I'm still not thinking as big as I should. So that's a realization that I'm getting more and more. I don't know whether it's right one or wrong. It only time will tell.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I've learned, is I can actually think bigger than what I am right now.
Okay. But I suppose, like, you're in the middle of so many new things at the moment as well. Literally, there's probably only so much you can process in any workday, in any week. So it's probably a question of being kind to yourself also, and kind of going, okay, as you said, in your own words, step by step, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I think it's important to be step by step, but at the same time, it's like a tunnel. You have to dig it from both
Mm,
ends.
yeah.
So at the one end, you have to make yourself cautious, and step by step. At the other end, you have to push yourself so that you don't remain too confined, and push yourself to do bigger things as well. I think, and the art of doing that is not easy, but is something that one has to learn, I think.
So, Amit, what final nugget of advice would you like to share with people that you think
Well,
people should really sort of bear in mind?
everyone who is working or having a corporate career, and has a good focus on, or gets a lot of joy from work, and is a career oriented or a job oriented person, I think they should build multiple careers. They
Yeah.
should start thinking about being not only dependent on one job, or they should use their skills to build. There's a multiple opportunities, and they should broaden their horizon of the things that they can get. So be more external focused, interact with people a lot, have conversations with really meaningful and intelligent people, and broaden their horizon. I think that's one thing. And second is, if they really have any interest of being entrepreneurial, they should seriously start thinking what's the right time for them and take a plunge, right?
Absolutely. Well, Amit, thank you so much. That's been an amazing conversation. Thank you for your time. And you know where to find me when you're next in London. I think I owe you
Absolutely.
a cuppa or a glass of wine.
Absolutely. Well,
Cool.
I'm very keen to come to London and have to find a way to. Yes,
Fair enough. Well, you know where I am. We look forward to seeing you real soon.
absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks once more to Amit for sharing his story with us. It was fascinating and inspiring. If you'd like to connect with Amit, he's really happy for new connections on LinkedIn. If you're listening and this sparked ideas about your next chapter, brilliant. Or if you're managing a team and thinking about how to support them, that's what Careers Unpacked is here for. If this resonated, please share with one other person. It would be fantastic if we can get more people to think about managing their careers. And remember, your career doesn't have an expiry date, so see you next time.